All right. Hey guys. So this is Liz Barnett Simmons. I am a fitness and food coach based in northern New Jersey and the New York City area, although I definitely work with people all over the place. And this is WTF Wednesday. So if you haven't tuned in before, WTF Wednesday is sort of my weekly little opportunity to connect with you, to discuss different wellness and health trends. Things that are gaining popularity, things that you might have questions about, that I might have questions about. Previous topics that we've discussed include intermittent fasting, high intensity interval training. I did one on adaptogens that I'm actually going to reshoot so that I can put it on my blog. And that's a good actually thing to know. These are Instagram live, so they are available for 24 hours. I'll repost it when we're done. So you do have a day to kind of check back in and see what you missed. And then I do post them to my blog. Hey, Jackie. Post them to my blog with some recaps and links and more information if it's something you want to dive in a little deeper. So that's what WTF Wednesday is. This WTF Wednesday is about a very controversial topic. Maybe it doesn't need to be so controversial though. Celery juice. So the trend of kind of downing celery juice in the morning. Just a couple things to think about. I have some notes behind me on my computer, so if I kind of look off into the distance, I'm not daydreaming. I just want to make sure I'm getting everything in. And I'll try to keep this short and sweet, about 10 minutes. So if you have questions, if you have personal anecdotes, I love to hear them because really this discussion is based on my research, the opinions I've kind of drawn based on that research, and in most cases, some sort of self-experimentation. So I too have dabbled with the celery juice trend. So love to hear more because I think that's really important. Your personal experience kind of is going to speak louder than anything else. So first off, I just want to say that I firmly believe that what you eat and what you drink can either make you more healthy or less healthy, right? And that can mean physiologically. So, food can help you, in terms of weight loss or weight gain or weight maintenance. And I should say, it also affects you in terms of your immune system, right? It can help boost your immune system or detract away from it. But then also psychologically and emotionally. And I think that's important, right? And I think that's really relevant to celery juice and that sort of trend. If it's making you stressed out, for example, to have to participate in it, that might not be a psychological benefit, right? So, that being said, you also should take into consideration that nature, I think, is very wise. And yes, foods can have amazing healing properties, but when one sort of food or one thing is sort of touted as an all-out panacea, like it can cure literally everything, that's when I start to have questions. And that's sort of what celery juice is turning into, this sort of like all-healing panacea, especially when that sort of claim is not backed up by any research. For example, turmeric or turmeric, depending on how you say it, does have a lot of potential health benefits that are being like really seriously studied. So that's great. And I think that's just going to lead to more sort of information and ways that we can apply things into our diet, into our daily life. But there's very little research. There's some on celery, not so much celery juice and all the benefits that are being purported about it. I think it's also important to realize that drinking celery juice every morning is not going to actually undo all the damage you're doing from binge drinking all weekend long, perhaps, or ordering takeout 4 nights a week, right? You can't erase all your food and lifestyle sins just by drinking celery juice in the morning. So I think that's important to recognize. Secondly, unlike other sort of health trends, there's probably not anything wrong with drinking celery juice. It's probably not going to harm you. It's not going to have any deleterious effects. There are some special cases that I'll talk about that you want to be aware of, but again, it's not hurting you. Finally, I'm, as I mentioned, a big fan of safe self-experimentation. So this is pretty much why I do WTF Wednesday. I usually talk about things that I at least have some personal experience in. So if you've done your research, if you're dealing with something that you think celery juice might help with, and it doesn't add you any stress to your life or take away from other healthy habits, go for it, right? Great. So that's just want to put that caveat out there. If you love celery juice, you do you. So if you're not really that familiar about it, or with it, I should say, it's been popularized by this guy, Anthony Williams, who's better known as the medical medium. He has no science background. He has no medical background, actually. He's become famous because apparently at a very young age, he was able to sort of sense when people had sicknesses and other illnesses, or just things wrong with them. He apparently, when he was 4, diagnosed his grandmother with cancer, lung cancer, I think, even though she had no symptoms. And it turns out apparently she did have cancer. So, that's a whole other ball of wax to unravel. But, you know, he says he hears what's wrong with people from like another spirit, and also that he is the only man alive that can do this. So those are some pretty big claims. I will just say, if you've ever heard of John of God, who's this Brazilian healer that supposedly was able to heal all these people just with his touch, and also doing these like weird unanesthetized surgeries, he's just been accused of a lot of sexual abuse. So, sort of when you're claiming you're like the only person that can do this really out there thing where there's no sort of scientific background about, that always makes me kind of wonder. Also, I saw him interviewed by Mario Lopez, as AC Slater, who's looking great, and medical medium not so much. He didn't look really good at all. So maybe the spirits are not telling him what he should be doing for himself. Anyway, some claims made by the medical medium include that celery juice is an alkalizing, enzyme-rich, electrolyte-enhancing, liver-repairing, blood sugar balancing, antiseptic, and more. And there actually are some truths behind those massive claims, but we'll get to that in a second. He also says if people knew all the potent healing properties of celery juice, it would be widely hailed as a miraculous superfood. He also called it heroic elsewhere. Celery has an incredible ability to create sweeping improvements for all kinds of health issues. Celery is truly the savior when it comes to chronic illness, and I've seen thousands of people who suffer from chronic and mystery illnesses restore their health by drinking just 16 ounces of celery juice daily on an empty stomach. That's like the definition of a panacea. So, claiming that something can kind of help everything without really any explanations. Another one of his favorite phrases is, although science hasn't discovered it yet. So he apparently knows all these things that science doesn't. And trust me, I do believe that there's plenty out there that medicine and science haven't caught up with, especially if you're talking about like the pharmaceutical industry, for example, or maybe they've chosen not to catch up with. How's it this guy knows everything and everyone else knows nothing? So that's, just my 2 cents on him. So some specific claims he makes on celery juice is that it strengthens digestion, that it has powerful anti-inflammatory properties, and can cure things like Hashimoto's thyroidosis, thyroiditis actually, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, Lyme disease, migraines, vertigo, celiac disease, irritable bowel syndrome, diabetes, psoriasis, eczema, acne, lupus, Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is sort of related to chronic fatigue, sarcoidosis, Raynaud syndrome, gastroesophageal reflux disease or GERD, gout, bursitis, bloating, intestinal cramping, distension, acid reflux, vertigo, constipation, restless leg syndrome, tingles, numbness. I mean, this just is getting to sound like an episode of House. I don't know. He says it's perfect for reversing inflammation because it starves the pathogens. All these other things. I'm not even going to get into it. Just go to his website if you want to check it out. Lots of big claims. There are some, again, truths behind it. He talks about celery's mineral salts, which it does have, but he's saying that there are these undiscovered ones, and just they're killing the pathogens and all these crazy things. Okay, there's no science-based research to this support it whatsoever. None, nothing. There are a few articles on celery, which I'll get to, but he makes some pretty big claims. Now, there's also a very specific way to celery juice. You can't just do it any which way you want. You have to juice just the celery, so ideally with no other fruits and vegetables, although he says you can kind of wean yourself using cucumber and apple. You have to drink it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, so you can't have anything else to drink or eat, and that you shouldn't eat or drink anything for 15 minutes after. So those sorts of claims. It also happens with food combining in terms of 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after. It always baffles me because the transit time of your digestion can vary like a lot. And there's not some sort of like after 30 minutes, all of a sudden, you've digested everything you need to digest and move on. So that's just kind of like, you can't recommend that. Hey guys, so we're just talking about how to celery juice. If you missed what the big deal was about celery juice beforehand, when you replay this, I talked all about what the medical medium says. Here's the thing. There are some actual benefits of celery. All these recommendations are based on a cup of celery juice or all these references, I should say, are based on a cup of celery juice. So whatever I'm saying is based on a cup. And he says to drink 16 ounces, which if you have a blender bottle, right, is like 3/4 of the way up. So 2 cups, 16 ounces is 2 cups. So a cup of celery juice contains 215 milligrams of sodium, as well as 670 milligrams of potassium. And those are electrolytes. Potassium, you need about 4,700 milligrams a day. So that's about, a third, less than a third. It's about less than a quarter of what your daily needs are. But you can also get it from things like avocados and bananas and other sort of fruits and vegetables. But it is a good source of potassium. It also is a good source of vitamins A, K, and C. So it's got 99% in 1 cup of your recommended daily intake of vitamin K. It's got 19% of your recommended daily intake of vitamin C. I don't actually have the reference for how much vitamin A it has, but something to think about. Vitamin A and K, as well as E and D, are fat soluble. So you need to consume fat with them in order to actually take the benefits away. So if you're just drinking straight celery juice, you're not going to get as many of the benefits. Let's see, it also has 16% of what you need daily for B6 and 10% of what you need for calcium. So listen, like celery is nutritious. A lot of people maybe forgot about that because everybody's all about like kale and all those sorts of things, but celery is not like a nutritional loser. There's definitely reasons to eat celery. It's also very high in fiber, which is great. However, when you juice it, you lose that fiber. Something to think about. It also has beta carotene, iron, magnesium, and phosphorus. And celery, there are studies that show, that it's high in flavonoids, which are a type of antioxidant, as well as other antioxidants. And flavonoids are associated with being anti-inflammatory, protective against chronic disease, and protective against oxidative stress. So there are, like I said, some truths from where he's kind of pulling this information. There are several studies that say that celery seeds specifically do have antihypertensive properties, meaning that they're good for blood pressure, which the medical medium also says about celery juice. And, celery juice in general has powerful antioxidant characteristics. So that helps remove free radicals from the body, and potentially consuming antioxidant-rich foods help protect against cancer. Just a side note, like you can't supplement with antioxidants though. The research actually shows that if you take like supplement antioxidants, it actually has the opposite effect. It actually is more related to having cancer. So even more reason to eat whole foods. Parsley Health, which is actually one of my doctors, they did a little article about this and just some other sort of benefits of celery that they say include its antioxidative properties. It can help prevent cardiovascular disease, jaundice, liver disease, urinary tract infections, gout, and rheumatic disorders. And this is a real thing, celery can help reduce blood sugar levels, which I'm going to talk about, blood pressure, which I mentioned, and blood lipids. There are experimental studies that show celery has antifungal, antibacterial, and anti-inflammatory properties, and it can be used with skin conditions as well. So I'll link that article in the blog. So, it's a health food. Definitely is a good food to eat. There are some cons, right? So other than the act of drinking celery juice maybe not being as effective as it's supposed to be, making celery juice is time consuming, especially if you make it yourself. I don't know if anybody has a juicer, but it's a giant pain in the ass to clean. It's also a waste of food and money. You need like a whole head or more of celery to make 16 ounces, and then all that pulp goes into the trash. As I mentioned, as with other forms of juicing, you're actually missing out on the fiber, which is in the pulp, and that actually is what is essential for digestion and is the thing that actually, I know I just said actually 3 times, but actually sweeps out the toxins from your body. So when you poop, fiber helps bind to toxins and get it out of your body, not some sort of like ephemeral weird thing in celery juice that we don't really know anything about according to the medical medium. Fiber is also really important for satiety. The chewing action of eating celery is also important for satiety. It really should be organic if you're going to juice or eat celery. This is one thing that I fully disagree with the medical medium. I think he's trying to make it more available to people, and he's saying that no, you don't have to have organic, but celery is 10 of 12 on the Dirty Dozen list. If you're unfamiliar, that's the Environmental Working Group's list of 12 produce, fruits, and vegetables that you really should try to have organic because they are associated with having really high levels of pesticides otherwise, and celery is number 10 out of 12. And here's another like pro/con that I kind of alluded to earlier. Doing this whole thing like every day and being obsessed with having your celery juice and not eating anything else before it and your day can't start, like that sort of obsessive behavior, also being obsessive about whether or not you're noticing any progress, that can be unhealthy. So if that's something that you're finding that you're experiencing, just something to think about. There are very few sort of groups of people that have to be aware of having too much celery juice or too much celery. And those people are if you have any sort of clotting disorders, because vitamin K, which celery is really high in, helps with blood clotting. But you can have too much vitamin K. And remember, I said a full 16 ounces has twice as much vitamin K that you need. And if you're having additional leafy greens, which are really high in vitamin K, you can be getting way too much vitamin K. Additionally, it can help with blood sugar lowering. So if you are already diabetic, or maybe you're eating low carb, or you just have sort of blood sugar issues, and you like lower blood sugar is not always better. That's another sort of thing. People think like lower blood sugar. That's not always the case. That's something to think about. Finally, here's the thing. Like I said, it's not the worst possible thing you could do for your health. There are a few reasons why I think celery juice can work to make you healthier. First off, it might be crowding out something less healthy. So say you start your day first thing with like a cup of coffee, and that's very dehydrating and there's a lot of caffeine in it, right? That's not great for your cortisol levels. Starting with celery juice is obviously way more hydrating than that. It's mostly water and some minerals. The simple act of taking the time to do something for yourself, to pull out the juicer, to wash and chop the celery, to, run it through and drink it, that could be helping you in terms of a self-care way. Although that doesn't count if you're just going to the local, juice press or whatever and spending $9 at a juice bar. You don't get that self-care aspect. You are performing a healthy habit if you're doing this, and it might inspire you to do other health supportive things, right? If you start your day with celery juice, you're probably not going to go get a bacon, egg, and cheese right after that, I hope. There is the placebo effect. So if you think it's working, it's working. I've actually been doing a lot of self-research on this. And if you start to think you're a healthy person, not just like I'm doing healthy things, but I'm a healthy person who does healthy things, it has a very powerful effect on your mind. So if stress is causing you to be constipated and have skin rashes, but you think celery juice is the best thing ever and it's working, it's probably working. And finally, as for people with chronic conditions, especially autoimmune related, I understand how incredibly frustrating and painful it is. It's hard to find something that works. A lot of them, medical interventions out there don't help, or maybe they make it worse, or they cause other problems. Treatments are ineffective at best and, like I said, cause problems at worst. Diet definitely plays a role in mitigating the symptoms, and celery juice or celery and focusing on these sorts of anti-inflammatory foods can kind of help that. So those are my 2 cents on celery juice. Again, is it all the medical medium has it cracked up to be? Probably not. Does it have health benefits? Sure. Should you probably just eat celery? Yeah. But is it the worst thing that you're doing? Not really. So if you have any other questions or comments on that, let me know. Again, this is going to be reposted and available for the next 24 hours, and I will post it on my blog with some recaps. Have a great week, guys.